So the old adage goes, and it's been said like this for a long time, that only WoW can kill WoW. There is no such thing as a WoW killer, and at the end of the day, WoW will only be killed by itself. And that seems to be more true than ever, thanks to the rhetoric of all the classic WoW players out there. Evidently, all the classic Andes believe that WoW is indeed dead, at least in terms of retail, and classic WoW is the future of WoW. Now, where do I get this from? We recently watched a Nixium video that I'm going to talk a little bit of shit about. Now, I love Nixium. Nixium's a great guy. He is essentially the combination of if a member of Geek Squad had sex with a Nordic Viking. He's a sexy man. I love him, and I'm not talking shit about him in particular, but I am talking a little bit of shit about his take.
Genuinely speaking, at least for myself, it really seems like classic World of Warcraft is the future of World of Warcraft. Not whatever the next expansion is on retail.
I think we need to take a little bit of a step back here, people. I think we need to calm down and realize that this is not the case. That retail remains more popular than Classic, even though maybe right now more people are playing Classic because of hardcore mode and everything else. And there's really nothing going on in retail. But retail is still the future of WoW. And I'm going to show you guys a little bit of evidence to back that up. Now, you guys know about Google Trends. It basically shows you things that people come up with when they're typing into Google and how much that's happening and how often. Let's take a quick look here. Now, I did talk about the fact that I believe Dragonflight as an expansion had a higher peak than Classic did. And this backs that up. So we look at the dates here. November, around this timeline, is when Dragonflight launched. And look at that peak. We are at the top of the mountain. And that is because Dragonflight was indeed somewhat popular in the beginning. Yeah, it had some popularity, right? People were into it. People wanted to know what's going on with retail, what's going on with Dragonflight, and whether or not it's going to be a good expansion. Now, if we go down the line, there seems to be a Nexus event here in like April 2nd to 8th. We see a flip where Classic now took the lead in terms of searching on Google. And that continued up until this peak here, where we see in August. Now, what happened in August? Classic Hardcore official servers came out. And that makes sense. We had another big peak here for Classic, right? But Classic Hardcore's peak is nowhere near Dragonflight's peak. Now, this is what I'm talking about. The peak excitement of the player base still resides in retail. Now, me, myself, I am a retail Andy. I play retail all the time, been playing retail all my life, and I'll continue to play retail for the rest of my life, because that's just who I am. You know, I have nothing else better to do in my life than fucking stream this game all the time. Come super rare on me, yeah. Yeah, and say things like that, right, for people to fucking drop during my stream. By the way, check me out, Samiccus, if you haven't watched me already. Classic doesn't have a future. Okay, Classic's future, now people will say, oh, but we're going to get Classic Plus one day, Sam. Classic Plus is going to come around, and it's going to be the biggest event in WoW history. I beg to differ. I don't think so. I don't think Classic Plus will ever hit the peak that a Dragonflight-style expansion will, or any other retail expansion will. And I also, you want to compare things? I don't think people would pay a box price for a Classic Plus expansion. You got to remember, Classic just piggybacks its sub off of retail. At the end of the day, people are not really just paying for Classic. They're getting retail with it. So at the end of the day, would anybody, if Classic was a separate game with a separate box price, do you think the sales of a Classic Plus would match the sales of a retail expansion? If you do, I would say you're in the Emerald Dream smoking some ganja and you're fucking delusional. At the end of the day, Classic is good for what it is. It is a nice piece of, playable World of Warcraft stuff that you could do when retail is like it is now and is kind of lacking on some content. But it is not a standalone product. It is not the future product. Classic gives us something in terms of how it can help retail. What Classic has done is it has shown us that the leveling in World of Warcraft still matters. It's a good experience, and the world in World of Warcraft matters. That's why Classic is popular, because it brings back that open feeling. That feeling of a world that is just massive, that you want to get into. And that's the good thing about Classic, is it's giving devs feedback on what people still want. They still want to play a game that feels open world. They still want to play a game that has good leveling experience. They still want to get fully immersed in massive zones that cover entire areas and are biodiverse and yet still connected. See, that's the thing about Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms, is even though each zone from Dun Morogh to the Elwyn Forest and everything in between feels like a different biome, it still feels connected in a continent. And part of the issues I feel like with retail expansions is that every island that comes out, every whatever that comes out, Shadowlands specifically did this the worst of all, feels disconnected from the rest of the world. It feels like each zone in the new zone doesn't feel connected to the other zones, and it feels like the island itself feels disconnected from everything else that we've ever explored in the world. And that's a bad thing. That's a problem. And Classic has been teaching the devs that. So what do I think about Classic in general? I think Classic could help retail. Because at the end of the day, Classic is a dead-end game. People don't want to play an MMO that has an end. That's the whole point of an MMO. It's an open world that continues on forever with continuous improvement. And Classic can be part of that continuous improvement in retail. Classic can teach the devs what people still want out of an MMO. What makes Classic great can be brought back into retail. And it has to be. Because if this game is going to have a future, it has to be open-ended. And retail is the open-ended version of this game. Classic Plus will bring whatever it brings, but it still can't bring the type of improvements and non-ending gameplay that retail brings. So at the end of the day, I'm just another balding 33-year-old playing a game that I've been playing since 2005. And I want to continue to play this game. And in order for that to happen, retail needs to be good. Classic can always be there in the background, doing its thing, kind of reminding the devs of what makes World of Warcraft great to begin with, but at the end of the day, retail. Retail is the future of WoW, and retail needs to be the future of WoW. If I'm wrong, let me know. Maybe I'm just a classic Andy who's molding. Maybe you have comments for me. But at the end of the day, this is what I believe. I feel like the numbers somewhat back it up. And if we're going to have a World of Warcraft for the next 20-some years, it has to be a retail-backed future World of Warcraft. I do want to say that, you know, people look at WoW and they look on Twitch and they see retail, you know, is nowhere to be found and everyone's playing hardcore. But I promise you, at the end of the day, Twitch is just a flavor of the month thing. People play whatever's popular to watch. They don't necessarily play what's best. They just play whatever's popular to watch at the time. And right now, Hardcore Classic is definitely more popular to watch than retail. But I promise you, when the next expansion comes out, unless your name is Zaryu, who just happens to be this handsome man that people watch play, and they look at his webcam more than looking at the game because he's so damn good to look at, you're not going to be able to just make a living off of playing Hardcore Classic. You're going to have to play retail. So you're going to join me and the other balding 33-year-old popular streamers out there. We'll be playing retail, because that's where it's going to be at. Look, nostalgia is a powerful thing. It is a powerful thing, and I think nostalgia can be brought into retail as well. You can have old stuff, you know, brought back the right way. Not in a cataclysmic way, but in the right way. Where it still looks like the old zone, but is just in the new style. The numbers simply show that Hardcore released, and a smaller number of people were interested in it. No? Exactly. Exactly. The peak of Hardcore WoW, where like people are like, that's it, Hardcore has killed everything that has to do with retail. I think this is clearly showing that that's overhyped. Because if that were true, then everyone should have been screaming back here that Dragonflight has killed Classic and Classic is dead. Because this peak and difference in player base was certainly way larger than this peak is. And yet right here, you got all the hardcore Andys out there screaming their dicks off, retail's dead now. My name is Samiccus and I approve this message. Yeah, that's right. I don't know, yesterday I was just thinking a lot after that Nixium video, and I was just like, damn, man, that shit got to me. Like, I kind of get annoyed when people start saying that retail is dead because Classic is doing well. Well, if that were the case, Classic died a long time ago back in November. Wasn't this also one of the most watches Race to World First? I think I read. I could be 100% wrong. I'm not sure, but the Race to World First certainly had popularity. And guess what? When that was going on, it was the #1 thing on Twitch. That's why you can't use Twitch numbers to back up things. Classic has killed retail because everyone's streaming Classic. Now everyone's streaming Classic right now. They're not going to be streaming Classic next year when the new expansion comes out. Come on. The opinion contradicts Amsterdam, Sam. Sure you feel that way? Yeah, I do. I think, whatever Asbin says, or Nixium, Classic has something great to offer to the game. And that is, it like I said, it kind of brings the devs back to earth and reminds them of what people love in an MMO. But Classic cannot be the future of World of Warcraft. If that's the case, then just like Classic being a dead-end game, World of Warcraft will be dead as well.